My mother-in-law is trying to steal my entire identity and it's only getting worse. The very first day I ever met my mother-in-law, she scowled at me and said, "Wow, I used to look just like you when I was young." I was skinnier though. To this day, that is not even the rudest thing she's ever said to me. If I didn't love my husband so much, I would have left this marriage years ago, all because of the way my mother-in-law has always treated me. She has consistently made rude comments about my appearance, she likes to pick on my weight, and the clothes I wear and judge me for working in a senior home. My husband always tries to see from my side, but he seems to have a big soft spot for his mom and makes a lot of excuses for her. My mother-in-law had been weird to me ever since I've known her, but things got way worse after me and my husband got married. I remember a couple nights after we announced our proposal, my husband was up late on the phone with his mom, consoling her that they would still be close after he and I got married. I remember listening to the call and wondering if this was always going to be a problem in our marriage. If I knew what was to come, I would have left him right then and there. After we were married, her behavior started to swing in another direction. She started being really nice to me out of nowhere, taking an interest in the things that I did. Particularly, his mom would ask me a lot about my beauty routines. She had been showing a lot of interest in the way I did my hair. I was happy at first, I thought she was finally warming up to me. But one day out of the blue, my mother-in-law showed up to a family get-together and revealed she had dyed her hair the exact same color as mine. She walked up to my husband and I first and asked if we liked it. She said, "Well, the color just looks so pretty on you, so I figured I should try it." I thought it was a little weird at the time since it was a huge change for her and she has never dyed her hair previously, but whatever. Little did I know my mother-in-law was about to go even farther when it came to copying my appearance. I have a small tattoo on my lower thigh of a flower bouquet. It's my only tattoo. So I was honestly a little disturbed when my mother-in-law came over one day a couple weeks after dyeing her hair, to show us her new tattoo of a flower bouquet on her thigh. I immediately thought it was strange, but my husband didn't seem to see the weirdness in it all. When I looked closer at it, I realized it was the same exact tattoo down to the types of flowers in the bouquet. At that point I was getting really creeped out by my mother-in-law's escalating behavior. I sat my husband down and told him about how I was feeling. He told me that he understood his mom could seem a little insecure and overbearing, and he promised to talk to her about giving us a little space and the whole copying my appearance thing as well. I guess he did end up talking to her, because her strange behavior seemed to stop for a couple months. She just kind of started avoiding me. That was until I started planning my wedding. I hadn't heard from my mother-in-law for months until she finally reached out to me to show me the dress she was planning on wearing to my wedding. You can just imagine how disturbed I was when she sent me a picture of a full wedding dress with a veil and everything. But little did I know, that was only the beginning of her insane attempts to ruin my wedding. My mother-in-law is trying to steal my entire identity and it's only getting worse. The last time I had heard from my mother-in-law after not speaking to me for months, she texted me a picture of the dress she was planning to wear to my wedding. The dress in the photo was a full wedding dress with a veil. On top of that, it was her in the photo. She was in a bridal shop taking a selfie, so she had gone to try on wedding dresses for a wedding that wasn't even hers. She had made me uncomfortable plenty of times before this, but this was a whole new level of creepy even coming from her. I texted her back trying to sound as calm and patient as possible. I told her that it would be a little inappropriate for her to be wearing a wedding dress. I told her I was fine with her wearing white even, but I'm uncomfortable with her wearing a big extravagant wedding dress with a veil. She left me to read, and when my husband got home that night he told me that his mom had called him sobbing today. Apparently, his mom had told him that when she showed me her dress, I responded to her saying she was too fat and old for it. My husband looked hurt, but I was shocked he was so quick to believe her lies since that sounds nothing like me. I showed him the conversation between her and me, and instead of admitting that she had lied to him, my husband just said his mom must have misunderstood. I was getting so frustrated with both of them at that point, I was honestly thinking about calling the wedding off, and I definitely should have. But everything was already in motion, and the next thing I knew, it was the day of our wedding. My mother-in-law had begged us to include a mother and son dance in our wedding, and my husband agreed. I really didn't have a problem with it, as long as she wasn't wearing a freaking wedding dress. I didn't care what she did. The problem came as soon as the reception started. My husband and I were supposed to walk in and then have our first dance together a couple of minutes later. I was so confused when me and my husband got in position to have our dance, and the music for the son and mother dance started instead. Before I could protest, my mother-in-law was stepping in between my husband and I and sweeping him away to dance with her. It was insane. She just stole my moment like it was nothing. My husband had our first dance directly afterward, but the moment felt ruined and I was hurting the entire time. Afterward, when I started mingling with the guests, I started to learn the truth about how my mother-in-law had been acting the entire night. Apparently she had been making people uncomfortable by saying that her son never spoiled her with fancy stuff like this and this should have been her wedding. I never heard her speak like this before, but I could imagine her saying all these things. The cherry on top was when I spoke to the DJ and found out she had bribed him to switch the order of the dances and put the mother and son dance first. I thought I couldn't get any more disappointed and upset with my mother-in-law until she came over to my husband and me at the end of the night and asked us for something completely deranged. My new mother-in-law looked at us and said she was already feeling lonely with us getting married and all, and she said she was going to miss her son so much and she wanted to spend more time with him. She then asked us if she could come with us on our honeymoon because she had always wanted to go there anyway. I was just frozen, just waiting for my husband to answer. My mother-in-law is trying to steal my entire identity and it's only getting worse. At the very end of the night at my wedding, my mother-in-law asked my husband and I in 100% seriousness if she could come with us on our honeymoon. I almost started crying tears of relief when he told her that she was out of line, and that even though he loved her, this time was for him and me. His mom was intoxicated from drinking all night, so she started blubbering and crying, saying that she just didn't want me to take away her little boy. At that point, my husband asked one of his aunts to please take care of his mom and make sure she got home. I was so proud of my husband for sticking up for both of us and finally putting his foot down when it came to his mom. When we took off for our honeymoon, I was on cloud 9. I remember looking out of the window from the plane smiling, thinking about how I was only getting farther and farther from my mother-in-law. My husband and I spent an amazing first night at our resort. The country we traveled to was somewhere we've always wanted to go, but it is exotic and quite far from our home country. It was one of the most beautiful and romantic nights of my life. I thought nothing could ruin this trip. That was until the next morning when my mother-in-law showed up at our resort. The front desk people gave her our cabin number when she proved she was related to my husband, and I woke up to the sound of her knocking on our cabin door. I can't explain how violated and stressed I felt when I saw her standing there. It was like I had been struck by lightning. I couldn't believe she had gone so far to try and insert herself into our lives. To my surprise, I saw my husband raise his voice at her for the very first time that morning. He yelled at her for stalking us. He reminded her that he had told her he didn't want her there, and that he was sick of her pushiness. She just kept crying and wailing while trying to hug my husband. At one point, my husband forcefully pushed his mom off of him, and it was like something snapped in her. She suddenly turned her attention to me. She started screaming at me, saying, "You turned my baby boy against me, but he'll always love me more than you." My husband had had enough when she started yelling at me, and he kicked his mom out of our room and threatened to call security on her if she didn't leave. I just watched the entire thing happen, saying nothing. I felt like I wasn't there. My husband tried his best to comfort me and salvage the day after day, but honestly I was just paranoid the day that his mom would ambush us at any second. I went to sleep early, but the next morning, I woke up again to the sound of my mother-in-law right outside our cabin door. I felt depressed at that point. She was winning this war. I just turned over in bed to face the wall instead of the door. I hear her and my husband arguing again. I could overhear that the crazy beach had bought them both tickets to fly home and asked my husband to come home with her since he had time to calm down since yesterday. My husband cursed at his mother and told her he was never going to love her like he loved me, and that she needed therapy and medication because she was sick. My mother-in-law started having an unhinged breakdown. She screamed at the top of her lungs and ran inside our cabin. I was still facing the wall, so I didn't see her start to come at me. She grabbed a chunk of my hair and ripped backwards. She only had me for a second before my husband tore her off me and carried her out of the cabin, kicking and screaming. The commotion and the screaming had been so loud that the resort security had called the police, and they arrested my mother-in-law while she screamed and cried for my son. There was nothing we could do to help her, and now, because of her own insanity, she's in a foreign prison and we have no idea when she will be able to come home.